Okay, you can see better now, yeah? Okay, good. So try to stay awake, yeah? But nothing yet. Okay, so welcome back to the week 2 of our lectures, our course, Digital Industries. I hope you all had a good weekend. Anybody did anything fun? Anybody went to Bletchley Park? We talked about it last week. No, you didn't have the time yet. Okay. All right, so today's lecture will continue after we had our introduction with a couple of examples, how we can think of the digital economy last week. And we talked about different types of technology causing or facilitating like shifts in economic cycles and economic waves. You remember the waves that we discussed, the concept, yes. Today we'll come back to the micro unit of the digital economy, if you will. All of us individuals, digital workers, as we will call them throughout the rest of the lecture. I just wanted to talk about the readings briefly. I had a couple of you approach me last week during the seminars. There seemed to be a slight confusion about the reading list. So as you will have noticed, we have required readings and we have recommended readings. Yeah? Some of you were concerned because in the recommended readings, you sometimes find books or book chapters. Yes? So, here's how it goes. The required readings are the only readings that are essential for you to follow, to be able to follow the lecture and to be able to participate in the seminar. Okay? The recommended readings are recommendations from myself and from Nick for further readings. When is that important? A, if you're so interested about the topic that you say, I can't stop reading about this, okay, which we hope will happen. Yeah? Option B, if you decide to write your essay, you might have had a look at the essay questions. If you decide to have to write your essay about a question that resonates with a particular week's topic, then I would recommend you look at the further readings. So you'll have like the basis to start thinking about your topic, to start structuring your essay. For the books, all the books that we recommend, all those are available through the King's College Library. Yeah? So you can go and take those out from the library. Sometimes you will even, if you do a simple Google search, some of these books you can also find a PDF online. I'm not able to provide you with these because of copyright restrictions. But if you have a problem identifying a book or a book chapter and you really can't find it, that you say this is essential for me to write my essay or maybe start writing my dissertation proposal, which I know you also have to submit very soon, please come and talk to me, okay? I will try my best to help you find it, okay? Is that clear? Any more questions on the readings? All the other readings, the required readings, are all available online, yeah? You all know Google Scholar. If you put in a Google Scholar, you can download it straight away, yeah? So there shouldn't be a difference. Okay? Okay, so let's start with our lecture, Digital Workers. A little introduction. The digital economy, as we define it in this course, is made of a number of different elements, which we will all cover throughout the rest of the lectures. We have different businesses, platform businesses like YouTube, for example. We have different industries that sometimes emerge on the basis of these different businesses, platforms, for example, or that emerge out of utilizing those platforms. Most of them can be seen in advertising or things to do with data. We'll also talk a little bit about data scientists today. We have technologies. These spoke about that last week. Yeah? The advent of technology always or seems to be a major factor to contribute to the advent, to the formation of a new economic cycle. We'll talk about blockchain and machine learning in future weeks. Today, we'll start talking about subjects. That sounds very abstract, very impersonal. What are subjects in the digital economy? Anybody have an idea? All of us, yeah? We often, when we do research, we also talk about research subjects. Those are the people that we talk to. Those are the people that are part of our research population, people that we want to study in order to come up with insight. Why do we look at subjects today? We want to come up with insight in terms of how the individuals, all of us who work, who participate in the economy, how they contribute to how this economic landscape looks like. In order to do this, we use a concept called social class. I hope you're all familiar with it. Who has heard of the concept of social class? Yeah? We will talk about this. We will utilize the concept of social class, the interests that individuals who pertain to a specific social class, what interests do they have? What goals do they have? How do they collaborate? And how does that impact processes within previous cycles of the economy, but also the digital economy? Okay? So this is what we'll do today. So what is class? Most of you will have heard about that. The definitions vary slightly. So if you talk to somebody, say a sociologist in Central Europe, in Western Europe, they will have a specific definition of what a social class is. And the criteria that we use to define a social class, and who pertains to what type of social class. If you go to the United States, people might have a different idea what comprises a social class. Many of you are from China. You might have a completely different understanding of what it means for an individual to be affiliated, to be associated with a specific class. We will discuss it in a little bit. In general, we can say that the concept of class, social class, helps us to group people together according to economic criteria. What could these economic criteria be? A question, if you meet somebody new, if I meet somebody new, what is the first question that people ask? What do you do? And they don't mean like, do we go to yoga class? I mean, they might, yeah. But what do they really mean? What do you really want to know? Your occupation, yes. And associated with that, what are you really curious to know? How much you make, cash, yes? How many K do you make, as we say here in the UK? Yeah? Why do people do this? Why are people so interested to know? I mean, it has here a way to group people together, but it's not only relevant for sociologists to look at people, at us, from a macro perspective, but also for us when we affiliate, when we relate to other people. We want to know where we stand in reference to other people. How well do we do? Are our interests met? Are we pursuing the right goals, etc.? All right? Social class, we use this in discourse to understand dynamics within the economy at large, but specifically within the digital economy. And the economy is fundamentally a system, it says here, that contains tensions and alliances between different classes. What does that mean? People have figured out since the very early days that sometimes it's easier to pursue a goal, to attain your interests, if you group together, if you form alliances. Yeah? We will talk a little bit about trade unions, for example. Do we see those still today, or has something changed? Okay? So class interests. As I hinted at already, different classes will have different interests, different goals, and different ways and means, or more or less control, in terms of attaining their goals. So what could be an interest, for example, of a worker, like somebody who goes to work in an office? What should be their interest? Let's say we talk about somebody who pertains to the working class. What do we want? Or what would you want if you were to start a job, I don't know, at some company? What is your interest? Salary.
Welfare.
Sorry?
Welfare.
Welfare, yeah? Very good. You want to secure a good salary, a salary that you think is fair, a salary that you think you deserve. You also want welfare. You probably want a contract that maybe gives you access to health care, that maybe gives you access to a good pension scheme, etc. So if we depart from the common worker, the common employee, and go to the elites, the people who are often considered to be at the top of our society, what do they want? If I come in and say I want to sign my contract today, let's give me 10K more, what will they say? Oh, if they're kind, they will say yes, they will give it 15K more. Huh? But most likely they will want to keep it down. They will want to keep costs down. They will want to look at what the company provides to you. I mean, depending. Not all companies are evil, but in most cases they are interested in their profit, obviously. Yeah? So there is a tension already forming on the basis of pertaining to a specific class, and the interests that are associated with those social classes. We see a tension forming. So how do people maneuver those tensions? We will discuss it today. In history, like historical examples, social classes and the struggles that they often engaged in. You remember we talked last week about the Ford manufacturer. Yeah, people who go to a factory, they go do their shifts, and sometimes when they say, when it reaches a momentum, and many workers say, I'm against this, I don't think I'm paid enough, I don't think I'm being taken care of by the company owner, then people form alliances throughout their social class, they bond together, and they will struggle for better conditions. One outcome of this, the welfare state that we have today, with minimal social security, in some countries it's better than others, is a result of these struggles and people forming these alliances. Okay? Also, the 2-day weekend. It has not been that long that people worked 6 days a week. Now that we have a 5-day week, work is actually a very recent phenomenon. And it is thanks to people affiliating themselves with a specific class structure and forming these alliances. Okay? So here we have an important thing when we talk about the digital economy and the economy in general. Last week we said technology is a fundamental concept, a fundamental indicator that allows us to understand, that allows us tracing the emergence of economic cycles. Here we have another one. Actions of individuals, actions of people associating themselves with other people within their specific classes. So this is sort of like, if you will, the second component, the second key insight for our lectures. Okay? So what criteria do we use to define class? I'm very curious how that actually works for you, because you're all from many of you are from China, or not the Central European way of thinking. So perhaps take 2-3 minutes to discuss with your partner what you think is the main criteria to define a class, and also for us to understand who pertains to what class, to what segment of social class. We'll discuss, we'll convene in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and I would like to hear some thoughts you have. Okay? You may talk. Okay. Okay, everybody, let's stop it here. We don't have to have an exhaustive conclusion. We just want some pointers, yeah, to get you thinking. Okay, so who wants to tell me one of the main criteria or aspects about a person's sort of like status in society that help us define class affiliation in your country or from, like, based on anecdotal evidence? Yes, please. Sorry? Your income. Yeah, economic criteria. Yeah? Anything else aside from income?
Maybe some cultural criteria, because they're a royal family of the UK.
Yes.
They are top class, but maybe they are not the richest people in the UK.
Well, I can tell you they're rich. So, actually, if the Queen said, move out of your house, I want to have it, she could legally do that. Yeah, so, yeah. But you said cultural things. Can you specify a little bit what you mean by that?
Like some jobs in China, or like those families in China, if you are a singer or actor, maybe you are not, maybe people will not respect you, but if you are a teacher or doctor or journalist, maybe you are respected.
Okay. So a specific status in society that is maybe related to your profession, so kind of like building on the economic criteria. But that is maybe also affiliated with your educational level, perhaps? Yes? Okay, anything else?
His point can be discussed as policy because as his example, teachers or lawyers in China, they are more stable occupation. So the policy, promotes this occupation rather than actors, musicians, artists. They are not less stable. So government will less like in a educational organization. They will say if you are better to be a teacher or lawyer rather than an artist because it's stable. It can make you
stability,
right.
security, maybe being able to plan ahead.
Yes, it depends on the government's promotion.
Okay.
Policy.
What do you mean by the government promotion?
Yes, because government is somebody who drives your mind. I think so if they promote more, they say these occupations are better. The group may prefer these occupations.
Okay, so the government, depending on their type of policy making, they incentivize people to take a certain profession. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Final comment?
Political position.
Political position? What do you mean by that?
I mean, in China, the politicians always have many power, and they always have a very high level in the society.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Power, the notion of power is something very important. Who has the control over who? And what can people do to either get more control or to maintain the levels of control that they already have? And what does it mean for our economy? So if we look at defining social class, many of you have already said that. Cultural criteria, yeah? Cultural criteria is associated or indicators to estimate the cultural capital, if you want, of a person. Is their educational level, perhaps, but also quite importantly, their preferred mode of consumption. Yeah? Sometimes this is referred to as taste. So what do people choose to do throughout their lives? What do people choose to buy? Where do they go to get these products? What do they do in their leisure time? Do they go to a pop concert or do they go to the opera? And what does it say about them? So we take taste, these modes, preferred modes of consumption, as acts of cultural signifiers. Okay? This is, of course, often related to economic criteria. So sometimes people who are in higher occupational levels, where they earn more money, sometimes this also influences their modes of consumption. Sometimes we will say they will acquire a mode of sophistication. They will go more to kind of like high culture events like opera, etc. Here's one author that is key for our Western way of thinking about social class, Pierre Bourdieu. Anybody heard about that sociologist? Who knows Pierre Bourdieu? Yeah? Do you want to share something about Pierre Bourdieu? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Uh-huh. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you mentioned something about high social class. We have defined these here as the ruling class. And often in a society, the ruling class is bestowed upon the power to define what is a matter of good taste. Yeah, so we kind of like grant them the prerogative to decide for us what we should aspire to, how we should become, ideally. If you want to read further, here's the English translation of his most important work, Distinction. This is a study about French society in the 1980s. And what he did, he looked very closely at people's modes of consumption, which we mentioned before. What do people eat? Where do people eat? How do people talk? Do they have an accent? How do people walk? Yeah? Do they walk like in a way that seems to kind of like exude authority, and so forth. Okay, class is a very hot topic in the UK. We heard about the Queen. I personally think that that's a major aspect why class thinking is so proliferate in the United Kingdom. Here's a funny slide claiming that something, or your choice of where you get your coffee from, is one tangible signifier of which class you pertain to. So where do you get your coffee from? You can't drink Costa coffee and be working class, Tory candidate claims. Why is that? Might have something to do with how much you have to pay for Costa coffee. If you hold a Greggs cup, you might be associated with a different class. There's one funny anecdote about, are you familiar with the singer Adele? The UK singer, yeah, very famous singer. She was once in an interview, and the reporter asked her when she noticed that something in her life had changed, that she became very successful, that she had done well in her life. And she answered that finally she's able to shop in Waitrose without feeling guilty. Yeah? So if you shop in Waitrose, be careful. Yeah? It might say something about you. Yeah? But always bear in mind, and this is important for you when you go through your life, these class signifiers, these segments of class, are to a certain extent fabricated. We talked about the ruling class and that you want to maintain control. So they come up with these signifiers and say, okay, this is the state of the art. This is what you should aim to be doing. This is what your goal should be. But this is completely elusive. It's arbitrary. Yeah? So whenever somebody says, this is elite way of thinking, you can acknowledge that, but you also always have the power to disagree and do your own way. Yeah? So nobody forces you to buy into the social class thinking. Okay? This is very important. It's fabricated. It doesn't really exist. If you think about the example of opera, now you have, if you go to the Royal Opera House, you will see advertisements of like jewelry, luxury products, because you like to be affiliated with those people who visit the opera, which are often high status individuals. But this is completely ridiculous, because opera is actually something very, very simple. Yeah? It used to be 2 centuries back, something that entertained the masses and nothing elitist at all. It has been made to be perceived elitist. But in principle, per se, it is not. Okay? It's a way to categorize people. Okay, so if we go back to economic criteria, we can say class is determined by your income bracket, or your level of wealth, if you will. Okay? So we have, we have those people at the bottom, like working class, and we have those people at the top, the ruling class. How do they make their money? What is the fundamental difference? Working class people, in order to get by, they rely exclusively, or most of the time, exclusively on their wages. Yeah? So on their monthly paycheck. Whereas the ruling class are often people who own equity, who own a company perhaps, people who own land, who own tangible goods that in themselves create value. If I think, for example, how much my landlord gets every month in rent from the house you're renting to me, I'd rather not think about it. Yeah? But in general, those people simply rely on the scalar effects of what they already possess. Okay? So essentially, we could say class is defined by my relationship or by an individual's relationship to what they produce. Yeah? So for a working class person, we could say most of their income, as I said, is made from wages. So how do they relate to their mode of production? So they give their physical work to somebody. Yeah? If we talk about the ruling class or the capitalist class, they have a completely different way of relating to modes of production. Yeah? They make most of their income from rent, dividends on stock, interest on savings, capital gains. Yeah? So what has actually changed in capitalism? If we look back, and the notion, this is to say that the notion of class is also actually an invention of capitalism. If we look at the notion of class, or how the notion of class manifested before capitalism, we see a fundamental difference. Before capitalism, workers could own their tools of production. So we see here a painting. Anybody knows what that is? I think it's Bruegel. I think it's the winter landscape. You can see it in the Dutch Museum, I think. Or it's also in Vienna, actually. Okay, what are their tools of production? We see a hunter here. They have a bow and an arrow. They own it. Yeah? So if you go out during the day and say, today I will hunt, I don't know, deer, and then come back in the evening and, I don't know, feed my family, or sell that meat, or whatever they kind of produce, to my neighbors, to other members of the community. Okay? There was no conception of unemployment here. So what is fundamentally different now if we talk about class in capitalistic times? We have a claim here that capitalism separates workers from their tools. Now what does it mean? If I go to find a job today, I don't bring my own tools. I don't bring my bow and arrow. What do I produce, or how do I produce? As in, how do I relate to my mode of production? What am I selling? What do I rely on? What do I rely on? Here, standing in front of you as your lecturer. I don't have any tools. My brain. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I can claim, okay, I have a certain level of knowledge. Well, people will think, I mean, whatever they want, yeah? But I have certain sort of like cultural markers that help me cement this idea that I have better brain power than somebody else. I have a doctorate from a prestigious school. I've been studying for a very long time. I have, I don't know, a number of publications. I have a doctor in front of my name. This per se doesn't mean anything. Yeah? I've met people who don't even have a high school degree, and just by plain common sense, they basically know what I know. Yeah? But people are being made to believe that this is a tangible asset, my level of education. Okay? So workers, if we say I consider myself as a worker in order to produce, they must sell their labor power to someone else, and most often on the basis of cognitive values. Yeah? So my brain, what do I know, and how do I prove that I know something? How do I make others believe the legitimacy of my knowledge? Okay? Okay, so class and the economy. So if we say we talked about the simple workers and we talked about the ruling class. So these are two brackets, like at the extreme ends of our society. Yeah, so we have the proletariat, sometimes it's often called, and the capitalist class. They are simple but often very effective ways to describe and analyze the dynamics in an economy. But obviously they are insufficient. They are just a starting point. Between those groups, between those two extreme groups, we've seen a whole series of intermediate categories arise, which we sometimes refer to, or some authors refer to, as the proliferating classes. These are highly salaried workers with a lot of education. They are often highly skilled jobs. Sometimes they are middle managers, so they are a little bit in between. So they do still have power from the top. So of course there's a company owner, they have the control over how much they will earn, about the control over how well they progress. But they themselves also have control. They can exert control over people that they manage. Yeah? So they will have some people above and other people below them. So they have a certain kind of level of control, a certain level of middle power, if you will. At the level of the capitalist class, we also have numerous groups. We have the industrial capitalist class. Those are the ones who own factories, who own manufacturing units. The financial capital class, those who make their money in financial markets, stockbrokers, hedge fund managers, equity managers. And we also, perhaps, if we jump forward to the digital economy, we might see the emergence of a platform capitalist class. What do they produce? How do they relate to their mode of production? And how does it benefit them? Any ideas? Who could be, or do you know any individual who could be associated with a platform capitalist class? Anybody you know? Yes? Mark Zuckerberg? Yeah? What is different for him? Is he an industrial capitalist who owns manufacturing units? Is he a financial capitalist? Perhaps he's turned into a financial capitalist a little bit. But what is unique about him? Or his business, if you will. What does he rely on? The platform, yeah. Technology, and also his way of maneuvering technology, yeah. How does he navigate what is being catered for him, yeah? How does technology serve him? And this, we often say, forms the basis of a new platform capitalistic class. We will explore that further. I also mentioned before that within classes and in the economy in general, sometimes change is facilitated through struggles. Yeah? We see here a picture of the Ford manufacturers. This comes up very often because it's just a very good illustrative example. We have assembly lines in factories. We have large-scale factory machinery. And we have high male wages, or relatively high, while women do unpaid or did unpaid housework. What was unique about this class is, as I already mentioned before, they built unions. So they had certain interests that were aligned with their class, with whatever class they pertained to, and strikes were their primary tactic to push for those interests. Now, does it hold true today? Do we have these trade unions still if we say we go to the platform capitalistic class? People who work for platform capitalists, are they on strike? perhaps? Anybody ever heard about a strike? Somebody working for Facebook? Sorry? I can't hear properly, sorry. Yeah. So we see, perhaps we see new kind of like alliances forming on the basis of a specific precariat that is building through or under platform capitalists. We'll talk about that in a second. So the question here is, have changes in the technical composition brought about by the digital economy led to a new worker subjectivity? Okay, a very complicated claim, very complicated sentence. What does it mean? What is a worker subjectivity? How do people think about themselves? How do people evaluate? If we say people pertain, or we can categorize, we can group people together on the basis of specific criteria to a class, how do people evaluate their own interests, their own goals? And if there is something that they are unhappy with, if they see themselves in a moment of struggle, how do they look at, in the digital economy, at these moments of struggle? What do people do? Okay, for that, let's have a quick look at work examples of workers that are active in the digital economy. Last week in the seminars, we talked, or we referred to some examples of newly emerging professions that you may or may not want to pursue in the future. And one thing that we see, or that one thing that many scholars agree, is that we see happening in platform capitalistic times is the notion of free labor. So why might we be doing free labor? Or why might anybody be offering free labor? In the sense of giving away our personal data that then other people use, platform capitalists use, in order to generate value from it. Why do we do this? Yes, we see a certain benefit, yeah? So we take the good with the evil, if you will. We say, I know Facebook, they get all the data from me. Whenever I hit like, actually they might sell that data to some kind of company, but it gives me an opportunity to stay on top of, things that are happening with my best friend. I might find out about interesting events, etc., etc. Yeah, so we kind of, in our head, we compensate for that fact of free labor by finding our own balance. Yeah, so we say, okay, we know about this, we give away data that other people earn lots of money with, but I focus on my benefit. I still see a certain benefit for myself. Then we have one example of people working in the gig economy, which is sometimes referred to, some people also call it the sharing economy. Here we see a delivery driver. What do? They have relatively long-term shifts, and they go from, we can't really say they have a career, we mentioned that before, a career trajectory. You just have jobs, yeah? Jobs that pop up on your mobile phone that are sometimes referred to as gigs, yeah? What we see happening here is relatively stagnant wages. Does anybody know how much a delivery driver makes, approximately? Can anybody guess? How much do you think does a delivery driver make?
Is it not £4 an hour and then £1 for each delivery?
Yes,
Within that
yeah.
hour?
They had a slight change.
Yeah.
I think that is a new system. Before that, they had, I think, a average wage of £8 an hour. Now they say, okay, we give you a baseline salary of £4 an hour, and with every delivery you make, you get an extra top-up. You get sort of like a bonus. So it's up to you, really, how much you will take home at the end of the day. It's up to you how fast you cycle. It's up to you how well you know the city, so you can avoid traffic, perhaps. if we say those delivery drivers are unhappy, so £8 an hour or £4 and some bonus payments, I mean, are not really enough money to get by or to live a good life in an expensive city like London. So if they find themselves in this moment of struggle, if they say, no, that's not enough, what can they do? Depending on how they are organized. So they are coordinated through an interface, they get their mobile phone, they have an app, and they pick up jobs, and they cycle. Do they have the same alliances like Fortis manufacturers used to have? Is it easy for them to go on strike and say, I demand better work conditions? No, why is that?
They don't meet each other. They don't know what are
Yes.
their co-workers.
They rarely meet other workers, hence fewer opportunities to sort of like collaborate or maybe exchange experiences and talk about their different types of struggles. So it also gives them, we might say, less opportunities to take on control. Yeah? So in a way we see them we actually see a more precarious example of what we used to see in the 1960s, 70s, contingent on how these people relate to their product. They relate to what they do through an app. Yeah? They don't go to a physical space where they actually produce something through giving their physical ability. What they do, they pick up jobs, they pick up gigs, and then move away. Okay? So that's one aspect of digital workers. We also have a work profile, a job profile emerging that is called content moderators. Do you know what that is? People who sift through content on Facebook, YouTube. They watch terrible pictures, sometimes violent, pornographic content. And they need to go through this because, I mean, many companies like Facebook and the like, they have tried to automatize these kind of like filtering processes. But still, up to this day, it's still most often done by a human. Yeah? For Google and Facebook, this is typically done in the Philippines. How much do you think a person like her, this worker, makes? Any ideas? Typically $500 a month. So you have an annual salary of $600. Yeah? So precarious work conditions. They often work on information, large office spaces, and have frequent turnover limits collectively. Now let's look at a more positive example perhaps. We have here the precariat, people who are not able to form alliances within their social class bracket. Data scientists and data engineers, those are often considered the winners of the digital economy. I mentioned last week, if you want to pick an industry that you want to go in now, perhaps this might be a wise choice. Yeah? Very high in demand at the moment, and can command a very large salary. Do they have a reason to complain? Do they have a reason to form alliances? Do they find themselves in moments of struggle? What do you think? Yes or no? Not really. Yeah, so they don't have much sort of like incentive to complain about the status quo. They say, yes, we have platform capitalists like Mark Zuckerberg or maybe even Jeff Bezos, but yeah, actually just let them do their thing. I don't mind too much because I'm making quite good cash here, so what do I care? Very natural stance, I would say. Yeah? So they have little reason to question the status quo. What about social media creators? We have one next week. We have a guest lecture next week with a YouTuber. Where would we put them? Would we put them at the bottom end? Or would we put them at the top end? Ruling class or proletariat? Where would you put them? Yes, it depends how many subscribers they have. Yeah. So some of those people can get quite rich. Yeah. They have, there's some videos online of what houses they bought and all kinds of crazy holidays they're making. Yeah, sometimes, if you remember the article that you read for today's lecture, typically YouTube content creators, they say we do that because we love so much what we are doing. Yeah, actually this is a big freedom. We don't have to go to an office. We don't have a work contract. We can set our own sort of like goals. We can set our own, we can pursue our own interests. All we need is just a set of like a camera, and we can simply put it online. Yeah? Sometimes this is called, or this type of employment is called aspirational labor. It has the word aspiration, so people see a big opportunity there. And they say, oh, let me try and make it. Let me try to make it too, like all these famous YouTubers, and get rich. But the reality is that very often people see themselves at the mercy. They don't have a work contract, but very well they have different kinds of like handcuffs. They have platform moderators as well. We talked a little bit about algorithms last week that structure content and give preference to specific types of content. You will see why are there so many YouTubers that do something about, I don't know, fashion, that do something about how to lose weight. It's a very one-sided kind of like road. So people get sort of like tunnel vision. So if you say, okay, this is a free labor, you can pursue whatever you are interested in, but at the same time, you need to follow the status quo. You need to follow specific standards that are predefined by the owner of the platform or by the operator of the platform. So what sometimes might seem like a big freedom, actually for many people, for a good percentage of these people, the opposite is the case. Okay? Okay, how are we for time? One thing that I wanted to briefly mention before we close is this notion of the cognitariat. So if we talked about proliferating classes before, so those people that are middle managers, those people that are in between, somewhere between the proletariat and the ruling class, one thing or one aspect that we might add to our concept of class, digital workers associated with classes, is this notion of cognitariat. The class that comes with cognitive capitalism and those people that have nothing to sell but their intellectual power. Are they freer or less free than Fordist workers or workers in the Ford manufacturing unit? What do you think? More free? Perhaps sometimes, yeah. Other times we also see people who command a very high level of cultural capital. Lots of knowledge, high levels of education. Also here in academia, by the way, people who have studied for years and years and see themselves in a very precarious situation with determined work contracts, with little salaries. Okay? So this is something that might give us some food for thought for our seminars. Here are a few references for closing today's lecture. Again, this is not a must, but should you choose to write your essay on digital workers, I suggest you have a look at these references. Okay? I'll see you all in the seminars. Okay, how are you? Can you ask, do you have access? Yeah. I mean, if you send, I think it might be easier to send email to the different agencies at Crucial. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I think you can indicate your profile. Of course, yes. I mean, if you want to meet me during office hours, did you? Thursday, wait. Thursday, 2 to 3. Yeah. Yes. I'm already fully booked for this week, but if you want to send me next week,